Okay, so thanks very much for inviting me. And I came. I got attracted by this idea of breaking the rules, which I don't know how seriously you're taking that, but I'm going to encourage you to take it really seriously and explain why. But I was invited to also talk about the demand centre. So I'm going to try and do both, talk about the demand centre and about breaking rules in the same time. That turns out not to be too difficult. So the demand centre is an interesting phenomena. It's sort of coming to an end, and looking back, I'm wondering whether it was a big accident or not. So the research councils in the UK do these kind of international reviews of their energy research, and quite some years ago they discovered that most of their work had focused on supply and generation, and they hadn't dealt with demand. So they thought, oh dear, what are we going to do? They've got a lot of money, let's fund lots of centres all at once. 6 centres, £5 million each. That's a big investment. And because of the fashion for interdisciplinarity, they wanted some on social science. So that was demand, actually. And as I say, I think they got a bit more than they were bargaining for. From the Research Council call, the main questions relating to demand were about increasing energy efficiency. That's really how demand was understood. Or promoting new technologies, electric vehicles, heat pumps, things like that. Modelling future demand, taking account of the rebound effect, thinking about how to estimate future demand. A sort of on the edge, but it became more important over the 5 years, some interest in timing, partly because of renewable energy and smart metering. So when is energy being used? It's just crept a little bit onto the agenda. That was their agenda, and they have, as most kind of natural science and engineering funders do, a very clear idea about the function of social sciences, which is to help promote new technologies and to understand the social acceptance of heat pumps or electric vehicles or whatever it might be, and to promote, to overcome non-technical barriers and to involve communities in this, that and the other, and so on. So they were completely consistent with what I've written about before as the ABC. This is like learning to read. This is very, very, very simple kind of account. It's just that, attitude, behaviour, choice, that's as far as most engineers and policymakers get in terms of social science. So they don't read the rest of the learning to read book at all. There's no other letters enter the vocabulary, because the normal assumptions are so embedded, coming from economics and other kinds of disciplines. They're about people using energy. Okay, well, I'll agree with that. Energy consumption is therefore treated as an outcome of individual behaviour, and behaviours are chosen. Attitude, behaviour, choice. So if only we could persuade people to choose different behaviours, different patterns of energy demand would arise. And energy efficiency and consumption then depend on which technologies people are choosing. Is it this fridge or is it that fridge? So the challenge is clearly about ABC and beliefs and attitudes, and that's what social sciences do. So the first breaking the rules is that we did none of the above. So £5 million, 45 people, 11 universities don't care at all about attitudes, behaviours and choices, and we're all social scientists. So that's significantly breaking the conventions. So demand, I'm going to tell you the great benefits of not working with the ABC later, because I know some of you do. In fact, your whole conference appears to be somewhat influenced by it at the bottom. But demand is definitely, I've written some really kind of challenging stuff about the problems with efficiency. It's not about individual behaviour change, certainly not about the uptake of new technologies or what infrastructures. And so basically we got funded. This is what I mean about an accident, despite not doing all of the things that were set out in the call. But consequently, and this is where perhaps I should go now, and maybe we should stop the talk now, I'm therefore not also picking up many of the threads that are evident. So the bottom paragraph is taken from your call for papers here, and individual knowledge and attitudes and nudging and decision making, all these are topics that you're dealing with. So if you're stuck in that, I'm only on for 45 minutes, just like do something else or or pay attention if you like. But I'm setting out an agenda which is definitely not that. So take it as you will. I'm going to set out an agenda which works with very different starting assumptions. It starts with people not using energy. So we go back to a conversation about what is energy. People engage with the services that energy makes. I'm not using energy now. There's lighting, there's computing, there's all sound and all sorts of stuff, but I'm not using. Look at me, I'm not using energy. I'm not touching it, I'm not engaging with it. I'm not using it. Am I? So those are important kinds of questions. What we started with was energy consumption is an outcome of practices which are shared, not individual, dynamic, social, and that have histories. Economics and psychology never has history. We have history. Technologies, infrastructures, and institutions and policies aren't separate from what people do. They're part of it. It's not that you have a policy that affects behaviour. Policy is part of the social practices. That's part of the world. That's part of making needs and conventions. It's not outside of it. So reducing demand, if that's the challenge, and we go along with that, is about basically understanding the dynamics, how different kinds of energy-consuming practices are changing, perhaps kind of endogenously, not being deliberately pushed around, but understanding different processes of change. There may be scope to reconfigure social practices, academic life, international travel, these sorts of things, in ways that they become less resource-intensive. But that is not a matter of ABC or community involvement or anything like that. That's a matter of recognising how patterns of demand and consumption are embedded in technologies and institutions and infrastructures. So that's where all 45 people, and many more actually, because demand sort of had a rippling effect, began. So we are also breaking the rules quite significantly in being an end-use energy demand centre and really not caring about energy. Well, not in the way that energy is normally understood. So this is the trilemma. I don't know if the trilemma is important for you lot, but it's really, everybody just talks about the energy trilemma without thinking, normally. And the trilemma is about, policies that make a nice balance, whether that's a possibility or not, I don't know, between energy security, energy affordability, and low carbon supply. This dominates. But what's missing, always, is demand. How much energy is this triangle represent? Is this triangle this wide or is it that wide? And we've put demand at the top of the triangle, because if demand went down, a triangle would, what would happen to the shape of the triangle? Anyway, demand is systematically excluded from most policy by these kinds of things. And it's quite understandable, because demand actually is a political question, and so are some of these others, but in a different way. But the reason why I carried on being here and why you shouldn't get rid of me just now is that some of the conference call kind of picks up a little bit of that. And so I found this sentence, just one. So you obviously got a contradictory agenda, which is fine. But this sentence that says that energy transitions, which I've got a lot of suspicions about, but anyway, they challenge basic understanding about what energy means for our everyday lives. And that's important. Where does demand come from? What are the kind of coordinates of these trilemmas and other such problems? So we started in these contradictory places. We started by going beyond the ABC, by saying we're interested in systems and institutions of provision, long-term trends in comfort, what does it mean, these kinds of things. Social theories of practice, definitely not economics.